Do you have any advice for the meditator just starting out on the path with regards to the 5 hindrances and how to spot them, especially when they're running in their more subtle form? Because I think when you read what they are, once you start to meditate, you feel like you can observe them because they're quite gross in the mind. You can see them very, quite clearly. But in everyday life, when you're not in the seated practice, sometimes it takes me quite a while to realise that a hindrance has been running for some time, and I hadn't spotted it. Actually, I'm aware of it now, so I can kind of, slightly change.
I think that is it. We talked about this recently. Mindfulness is transient, and I think that one of the most crucial things that people need to learn is not to burden themselves with expectations, because you did become aware of it, and it's the moment that you do become aware of it that's so powerful, potentially. But if we burden ourselves with the idea that, I should have known this earlier, I should have seen this earlier, well, one, you're playing illusion games because you hadn't. Yeah. So the reality is, you saw it now. But that is perfect. That's brilliant. So you're able, you as I was saying earlier, you recognise the restlessness, you recognise something's not right, and you label it as best you can. And the other thing I think is, which is critical to this whole endeavour, which is at that moment not to seek its opposite. So if you're unhappy, don't seek happiness.
Right.
In that moment.
So acceptance of what is there.
Acceptance of what is there, because if you accept it and you are able to just rest with it, and I know it's painful, I know it's uncomfortable, but I never ask anyone to do anything I haven't done. It's painful, we know it's uncomfortable, but if you remain with it, you're able to discern that mental state changes by itself, and the pain eases, the discomfort goes away. And that is wisdom. If you try to make it different, if you're going, but I'm a Buddhist meditator, I shouldn't have hatred, you're playing illusion games. You're just creating a narrative, and it's not real, because what you are experiencing, what's real at this moment, and that's all that matters. So there are 5 hindrances. There are basically two kinds of, how to put this? There's either greed for experience, which would be sensual desire, or there's aversion towards experience, which is wanting to get rid of what we don't like. And the other 4 hindrances are all about forms of aversion, so ill will, sloth and torpor, worry and doubt, all forms of trying to get rid of a problem. Sensual desire is the one where you're trying to get happiness. So they're all forms of wanting life to be different than it is.
And I've read, in pretty much every Buddhist text or book that you come up, you see the 5 hindrances, sometimes written slightly different, but they all pretty much are written the same, like you've just said: ill will, doubt, flurry and worry, sloth and torpor. I suppose my question is, I have an intellectual understanding of what they are, and I can label with those words when it arises, but in everyday life, what are the more subtle forms that kind of people come, where the hindrances are there, but you wouldn't necessarily label it as sloth and torpor, or you wouldn't label it as hatred, because hatred itself in English has such a massive negative connotation that it'd be really easy to spend the whole day, to get to the end of the day, do your meditation and go, I didn't hate anybody today, I didn't hate myself, but that's fine, that's that one sorted. But I think when I look closer, sometimes there is hatred running in a very subtle form. So,
it might not even be a particularly subtle form, it's just you ignored it. I mean, always craving goes hand in hand with ignoring. You have to remember that, to give you an analogy, it's like you're holding a red-hot coal in your hand and you're wondering why there's so much pain in your life. eventually you notice it's because you're holding the red hot coal in your hand, and the moment that ignoring stops, you let go of the problem.
Right.
So ignoring is very much coupled with the craving. They go hand in hand. The moment the way I like to put it is that we all have an innate wisdom and intelligence. It's just we're not using it. Right? If you choose to look at it and see it for what it is, you automatically let go. Because you don't want to be sat holding a turd. Frankly, with the greatest respect, you don't. You'll get rid of it the moment you see it for what it is. And so hindrances are like that. Often when people start meditating seriously, they come to the teacher after a little while and say, it's getting worse. And it's not getting worse. They're just seeing what's there.
That's exactly how I feel. It's getting more painful. I'm not getting anywhere with this.
Excellent. Marcus, it's going so well. It is. Honestly, that is a sign of development. Genuine development. Not based on any kind of spiritual fantasy about what ought to be there, but seeing what's really going on. Yeah. Of course, there's a broad spectrum of, say, hatred. It doesn't have to be, cold-blooded rage. It can be just like irritation, boredom. It's a form of hatred. It's aversion. It's seeing nothing of value in this moment and desperately wanting another moment that's going to somehow be better than this.
And would you say that there's any benefit in kind of having a coping strategy when you see the hindrances running wild in somebody else and you're having to deal with them on a day-to-day basis, or is it just energy better spent just to deal with your own hindrances and try and learn how to react appropriately to that?
Very good question. There is a lot to that, actually, because it's the whole problem of suffering is based around identification with these mental states being me, mine, myself. Wherever ill will arises, that is the coming together of impersonal processes at that time which give rise to ill will. The ill will doesn't belong to anyone. It has no owner. It just arises. So if you see it in what we nominally and conventionally call me, okay, so you have to firstly recognise that this isn't me, this isn't myself, this is a mental quality that's arising, and divesting it of that personal involvement helps allow just it to be there, and that allows you to observe the fact that it's transient, and if I don't keep stirring it, eventually the will passes away. It's exactly the same if it arises externally. You can see ill will arising externally and note it as such, but still it doesn't belong to anyone. And then, of course, because we're not separate ultimately, there is a knock-on effect and there are responses in us because that other person is apparently doing ill will. Well, we have at that point we have to look after ourselves. We have to be mindful of our own responses and
not have the passionate response.
If the passionate response arises, that's fair enough, but you don't want to act on it at that time. And there is something to be said for counting to 10. Biting your lip and counting to 10. Because once you're out of that negativity, once the other person's out of that negativity, then you can have a really coherent conversation and a helpful conversation. Whilst you're both in it, you just don't want to be exacerbating it. But there is no perfection in any of this.
So it's just managing as best you can.
But the best you can becomes ever more wise and, coherent. And what I mean by coherent is the way you process what's going on. You process it with a lot more understanding, and a lot more compassion. Because I tell you one thing is that as you come to see how much suffering you've got in yourself, you see it all around you, and you realise that actually we're all in the same boat, and other people are resisting life through ignorance. They don't want to be doing that. And they want to be free of suffering too, you know.
And what advice do you have for maybe lessening the conceit? I know when I first started out, I felt like I was the first person to discover the path, and I was like, right, that's it.
Don't worry,
this whole lot here, look at them. I feel so sorry for them. You know, when are they going to realise the same thing that I, you know? So
just come for a chat with me, man. I'll knock it out of you. Don't worry.
But I think it is a huge. I mean, I don't know what everybody's like, but maybe it was my excuse that I kind of came to the conclusion that I think everybody kind of starts from the same ill-informed, passionate response to everything. And I mean, certainly coming to the centre helps you deal with the passionate response and you know, teaches you to maybe just take a step back and just observe what's going on before you get too involved. But yeah, what
conceit is madness. I mean,
but it's definitely there, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh, don't worry about it. I've seen a lot worse. Don't you worry. People amaze you. But that's fine. It's just some people. That's just they're predisposed that way. That's their particular bias. That's, you know, the way they've tried to get around suffering and so forth.
And as a
it's
teacher,
doomed, but you know.
As a teacher, do you have to essentially personalise your response and approach with each student on the path according to exactly where they are?
There is, I mean, there is a general template for how things develop, especially when it comes to insight meditation. But we don't want to be too caught up in all of that, because that's a prime area for the development of conceit. Right. I think self-assessment in students is, it's just, it's fraught, really. And people are best, because actually what it's doing is it's getting ill, it's getting sick from the medicine. It's using the spiritual training to reinforce this view of myself as special and different, and so
it's a
just
real trap, and I think it's really easy to fall into it. Definitely, when you first start, it feels like the natural.
Well, not only
response.
necessarily when you first start. It can develop at various stages, right. Because people get an idea in their heads about where they're at and what's going on, and it can be quite challenging. And in order to help somebody relieve themselves of that particular illusion,
it's quite interesting that you say it can occur, because that's just made me realise that actually all of these things that you're trying to lessen and just observe and not get too caught up in, if they don't get you the first time, they'll certainly come back a second, third, fourth, fifth time. So it's quite interesting just to hear somebody actually verbalise that there is a tendency to feel that, again, thinking in a linear path, that you've once you've
got to that stage,
once you've conquered one thing and you feel like you've got past it, that you're kind of done there and you can move on to some.
Yes. It's quite common for people to say, to come to me and say, I thought I dealt with that. Well, clearly not, because we're here talking about it again. And and I think it's learning to treat everything that arises on its own merits. I know it's difficult, but to apply yourself without a narrative. That one of the fetters, the fetter of personality belief, it's always trying to add to itself. It's trying to add narrative to say, I'm here, this is what's going on, because there's that terrible sense of uncertainty. And am I getting anywhere? Am I achieving? Am I getting closer? Closer? You're already here. So it's really, really helpful to treat all such descriptions very, very lightly about yourself and where you think you are, and be more intent on being interested in exploring what's coming up now, what's here now. And that way you don't tend to ignore, because what happens if you get an idea in your head that, I've dealt with that, when it comes up again, the tendency is to go, no, it's not happening. It can't be happening, because surely I'm beyond that. So you tend to sort of like just ignore it. So essentially all progress stops until finally you just go, oh yeah, all right, I am doing that.
It's interesting because being on retreat here this week, I don't know whether it's posture, but I've started to get some pain again in the back, which I haven't had for a long time. I certainly had that when I first started out years ago, but I thought I'd got past that, and I've kind of baked my own noodle today, sitting there in writhes of pain, feeling
it's all wrong.
It's knowing that I'm doing it to myself this time rather than it's just happening, and I need to, I've read that I need to learn to just observe and not react to it, and it's I think when these things come around you have a slightly different understanding, but that brings up other issues, because I'm kind of sat there running hatred and ill will at myself because I know I'm doing this to myself.
Marcus, that's fine, that's perfect. That's why you're here. And I know that a retreat setting is, in some senses, an artificial setting, and the schedule is in a sense not one that we would normally abide by. But it has this wonderful effect of showing all these tendencies in stark relief because you don't have an escape route.
Yeah.
Now, of course, we don't want to give the wrong impression that it's just like, a torture chamber. I think there are blissful times to be had, there are wonderful times to be had, but you're absolutely right, we do it to ourselves. All suffering is based on craving for life to be different, which is all based on ignoring truly what's taking place. I don't ever experience pain in meditation. It never happens now, because you learn what it is that you're doing and you just stop.
Yeah.